Attraction and close relationships. We're going to talk about how women make themselves more attractive to men, mainly because around the world, most societies in the world today are male dominated, and so it is up to somebody to make themselves more attractive to the opposite sex. And it tends to be females in most of the societies we're going to talk about. There are a couple societies where the males try to make themselves look more attractive. Bodybuilding, of course, is one of those situations. So let's go ahead and get started. These two women, this little girl and this and her mother, these are members of the Padang mountain tribe in Thailand. The women elongate their necks by several inches by inserting a number of brass rings around their necks as they grow up. As you can see, this is her neck is much longer than her neck, for example, and hers will be as long as her mother's when she grows up. They did X-rays to figure out why, and this is the reason why. Instead of actually lengthening their neck, what they're doing is straightening out their necks and separating the vertebra to some extent, not very much. This is what a normal neck looks like for a young female. Here's the clavicle. These are the beginning of the rib cage at your trapezius muscles. And this is what a Padang woman looks like. You can see she has elongated her neck to the extent that her vertebrae aren't any larger, certainly, and the gaps are a little bit bigger. But what she has done is depressed her clavicles, pressed her clavicles down, and she has depressed her ribs. So that's what it looks like. And that's to make her neck look longer. And this is what it's supposed to look like, and this is what it actually looks like for a Padang woman. Among the Mursi in Ethiopia, women stretch their lower lips by inserting progressively larger ceramic discs in a hole that has been cut through the lip. Another thing that they do is take out their two front lower jaw teeth so that the disc fits better. The bigger the disc, of course, the more attractive the woman as far as the Mursi are concerned. The Mentawai, women from Indonesia file their teeth into sharp points so that they have smiles that are not that different from a shark's. And as you can see, that's what it looks like. The Ainu women of northern Japan often tattoo their faces in what looks like a mustache around their lips. And there you go, two very attractive Ainu women. Women in Iran find rhinoplasty attractive because it is the most readily seen area of their bodies due to the law requiring them to wear the hijab. And this is, of course, they will cover their faces. Sometimes they'll cover their noses. And this is what they're doing. They're straightening their noses out. They're taking out that lump right there. These are women who have had rhinoplasty. Rhinoplasty is so common and prestigious in Iran that sometimes women will wear the bandages whether they have had the surgery or not. As you can see, that's more attractive. And she actually doesn't have any makeup in this picture. This is her before, this is her after, with her straightened nose. And she's done something with her eyebrows. There we go. Women wearing bandages on their noses to make them look more attractive. The Maori women in New Zealand have traditionally adorned a tattoo on their chin as a means to attract a mate. The sacred tradition is known as Ta Moko, and this is the foreign minister of New Zealand. She is a Maori, and this is a famous newscaster in New Zealand. She has the tamoko as well. The men, of course, tattoo their entire faces, but the women just do this to attract a mate specifically. Women in many Asian countries abhor the sun because their pale skin in Asia is a sign of beauty and desirability. It is not uncommon to see women walking outside sporting huge visors to keep the sun from hitting their faces. And when we were in Japan, we had female garbage collectors, and they would have huge straw hats on, and they would always have their arms covered, no matter how hot it was. And sometimes, oh, it did get hot in Japan. These ladies always wore gloves. They always wore long sleeves, long, thick sleeves, in order to keep from looking like a peasant working in the rice fields. That's the way it was explained to us. Women also keep their bodies covered from head to toe, even in the hottest of months, to keep their skin from tanning. Historically, if you were tanned, it meant that you were a poor peasant who had to work outdoors. Pale skin, on the other hand, depicted the life of luxury and wealth. These are women in China with what they call a face kini, to keep from getting their faces tanned. Now, the interesting thing is that when we were, I've been to Hawaii a couple times, and the first time we were there were just tons and tons of Japanese women there, and they would go out on the beach, and this was a big deal as far as they were concerned. But boy, I'll tell you what, they really slathered themselves down with sunscreen. But this is what they do in China, as attractive as that is. Face kinis. Members of the Maasai tribe in Africa wear heavy jewelry to stretch their earlobes over time. As time goes by, a woman's status in the Maasai tribe is heightened by how large and elongated her earlobes look, or will become. And there you go. To draw attention to their elongated earlobes, Maasai women will adorn them with brightly colored beads and jewelry to attract attention to their impressive size. And there we go. Many women in France opt for the natural look, which consists of little to no makeup. To look their best with minimal makeup, French women work hard to keep their skin in great condition with creams and other cosmetics. And that's one of the reasons why L'Oreal skin products are so prevalent around the world. It's because the women in France do whatever they can to keep their faces looking attractive, because they try not to wear very much makeup. They also do, well, this is really kind of interesting. She's got some fairly thick eyebrows. One of the other things that they do is they don't trim their eyebrows as much as they do in the United States. We saw the Iranian woman back here. You can see what they've done with their eyebrows. Anyway, and there we have two more French women, and as you can see, these are fairly full eyebrows, but they're supposed to look natural. And this is me. This is me, and this is one of my students in 2016. In 2016, the college where I was teaching closed, and she wanted to get a picture of me. With me, I'm sorry. And she's one of my former students. Just contacted her not very long ago, and she was telling me that she just had her second child. Interesting. She felt that her cheeks were too big, so she used posts on her cheeks to bring her cheeks in. I thought that was a little strange. I have seen her without her makeup on. She used to come to class from time to time if she was feeling lazy without putting her makeup on. And personally, I thought she looked just as good without her makeup as she did with her makeup on. But of course, that wasn't my decision. 20. So this is in 2016. Western women darken their eyelashes with mascara, trim their eyebrows, and paint their lips with lipstick. She had a what do they call that? A blog, a YouTube video program where she taught women how to put on makeup. And I don't know if she still has it. I've never actually looked at it, but that's one of the ways that she financed her education was with those videos. What kinds of faces are thought to be attractive? There seems to be a striking agreement around the world. Skin that looks free of blemishes, blotches, sores, and rashes is viewed as more attractive than skin that does not, according to Ford and Beach in 1951, and then Montague again in 1986. So skin is very important, especially to French women, obviously. People care so much about their skin because people tend to be attracted to healthy mates who would likely produce healthy offspring that would survive. And I don't remember who this is, but I think she is an actress that when she was pregnant, she posed for the front of Vogue or something, for the cover of Vogue. People usually don't think about selecting healthy mates, but their unconscious preferences for traits that are associated with health have been guided by natural selection. Responding to the apparent health of the skin could thus be a useful heuristic for sizing up the health of the one's potential mate in the ancestral environment. And of course, this is considered more attractive than this is. He looks healthier on the right side than he does on the left side. Second characteristic that appears to be universally viewed as attractive is bilateral symmetry. We are most attracted to people whose left sides of their faces and bodies look identical to their right sides. And this is that picture. Oh no, this is both of them. This is left sides put together, and this is right sides put together. So symmetrical. People are more symmetrical. And this is what they're talking about. Bilateral symmetry is an indicator of developmental stability. Given ideal growing conditions, an organism's right and left sides will develop identically. This is Brad Pitt. This is the original. This is, wait a minute, Paris Hilton. That's the original, and this is her left sides put together. This is her right side put together. As you can see, the symmetry, she looks almost identical in all three pictures. Not as much Brad Pitt. Well, I guess he does. Anyway, this is left symmetry, and this is right symmetry. This one just looks weird. There is evidence that people prefer symmetrical faces more than asymmetrical ones, and it has been found in all cultures studied. The preference for symmetry is even stronger in hunting-gathering populations such as the Hadza of Tanzania. And these are members of the Hadza tribe in Tanzania. A third characteristic of attractive faces is that they tend to be average. Facial features that are close to average in size and in configuration are perceived as most attractive. And I'm not going to ask you which of these is more attractive. I don't remember. They all look the same, pretty much, to me. Anyway, men tend to prefer youthful features in a woman, a characteristic called neoteny. And in other words, this is what a young child would look like. This is her, and as you can see, the high cheekbones, the plump lips. Both the child and the woman have youthful features. Women prefer some masculine features in men. This is the hair bun, I guess. I don't recognize all these guys. This is one of the Hemsworths. That's Jake Gyllenhaal. This is Leonardo DiCaprio. That's Orlando Bloom. These other two guys, I'm not sure who they are, but they all have that bun going. People with average sized features are less likely to have genetic abnormalities than people with deviant features. Humans can quickly process something that resembles a prototype, and quick processing is associated with good feelings and feelings of attraction. So when you see somebody that looks okay, it looks average, doesn't have any oddities about them, it makes you feel more comfortable about them. And these are women from around the world. This is a woman from India. This woman is Japanese. This is an African American woman, a Samoan woman, an Ethiopian woman, Uzbekistan, a Swede, and a Peruvian. And these are men from around the world. There's Uzbekistan, African American, white American, somebody from China, Italy, Hungary, the Philippines, and the Czech Republic. When researchers started mixing the facial features of different racial groups, they discovered that people found the results more attractive than the pure racial groups. The opposite sex found the faces of the Eurasian and biracial faces most attractive of all. And of course, this is Halle Berry. Her mother is white, and her father is African American. This young lady is Eurasian, as a matter of fact. In other words, she has one Asian ancestor and one white ancestor. And Keanu Reeves is Portuguese, Jewish, and a European American, and of a European descent. And this guy is the guy on SWAT. I can't remember his name, but he has mixed ancestry as well. He has his father is white and his mother is African American. It is not certain why multiracial faces are perceived as attractive. One account is that people should be attracted to genetic diversity as a marker of healthy genes. Multiracial represents the best average of all the faces the individual has encountered in their lives. The attractiveness of average features does not seem to generalize well to perceptions of bodies. It does not seem to be true that people are most attracted to those of average weight, height, and muscle mass, breast, and hips. And this lady is a mixture, perfect female body according to women. She has Gwyneth Paltrow's stomach, Emma Watson's hips, Elle Macpherson's legs, Jennifer Aniston's breasts, the Duchess of Cambridge's hair, and Cara Delevingne's face. And this is what the perfect female body according to men. Scarlett Johansson's hair, Megan Fox's face, Kim Kardashian's breasts, Michelle Keegan's stomach, whoever Michelle Keegan is, Kelly Brook's hips, I don't know who she is either, and Rosie Huntington Whiteley's legs. Anyway, so this is, as you can see, they're not the same. This is how women think men, what women think that men find attractive, and this is what men want women to look like. As you can see, they're very different. And of course, the perfect body as far as women are concerned, as far as men, looking at a man, Harry Styles' hair, Jamie Dornan's face, Brad Pitt's biceps, David Gandy's torso, and David Beckham's legs. This is what women want men to look like. And this is what men think women want men to look like. Brad Pitt's hair, David Beckham's face, Hugh Jackman's biceps, Ryan Gosling's torso, Frank Lampard's legs. He's a soccer player. And this is obviously done in England since there's so many soccer people involved. So as you can see, the woman's ideal man is a lot more slender than the male's ideal or thought that what women are looking for. In West Africa, the term fat is often viewed as complimentary, indicating strength and beauty. This is according to Cassidy in 1991. Within the United States, African Americans have heavier ideal body weights than European Americans and feel less social pressure toward thinness. Another aspect of interpersonal attraction is the propinquity effect. People are more likely to become friends with people with whom they frequently interact. Researchers looked at friendship patterns. This has to do with the propinquity effect. Propinquity just means close to. So you're more likely to be friends with somebody you're close to. You're more likely to be romantic with somebody that you see all the time. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's the person that you're right next to most of the time. Researchers looked at friendship patterns that developed in a police academy. The simple fact of who stood next to whom was more important in influencing police recruits' selection of friends than their personalities, backgrounds, and religious beliefs. So whoever they were standing beside, that was the person that became their friend. The person that was the closest to them became their friend. Well, this is something that you can utilize in the future if you are. This happened to me when we were having a faculty orientation at Ashford in 2011 when I first started there, and the people that were sitting around me became my good friends because I talked to everybody. And it wasn't that I introduced myself and whatnot. I just talked to them and made eye contact with them, and they became my good friends. The other people in the corners of the room, I was in the front, and the people that were around me in the front became my good friends. The other people, not so much. And they were from different departments. One was a business guy. There were two from the science department. So, and the people that it turned out that they moved all of us into the same office area, and there were some that were down the hall. These were the people that I knew, and so they became my friends. One reason that the propinquity effect works is because of the phenomenon known as mere exposure effect. The more we are exposed to a stimulus, the more that we are attracted to it. This has been shown to be true of attraction to other people, foreign words, music, and a variety of inanimate stimuli. The first time you hear a song, maybe you go, well, yeah, I can listen to that again. But if you've heard a song 3 or 4 different times, then you're more likely to want to listen to it again and again and again. The mere exposure effect appears to be a cultural universal. Japanese and Americans appear to be equally likely to come to like those people with whom they interact most frequently. And this is according to your author, Heine and Renshaw, from work in 2002. And remember your author, Heine, I can't remember his first name off the top of my head. Anyway, his wife is Japanese. People tend to be attracted to those who are most like themselves. This is known as a similarity attraction effect. Much research has shown that people are more likely to view someone as attractive either as a potential friend or romantic partner if both are similar in their attitudes, economic background, personality, religion, social background, and activities. In other words, birds of a feather flock together. They'll even have the same color hair, as curious as that is. So if we look at couples around the world, blondes marrying brunettes, not so common. Blondes marry blondes, brunettes marry brunettes. That's just the way it tends to work. It's really kind of weird, even if you don't even mention that, and you just go to somebody's wedding and you look at their hair, they will have exactly the same color hair. Research that sought to determine whether North Americans or Japanese liked similar or dissimilar strangers showed that North Americans had a stronger attraction to similar strangers than Japanese. In some studies, Japanese show a similarity attraction effect as well, but it is consistently weaker than the North American effect. And of course, Americans in the United States, and there is a difference. And this is a little weird because in Japan, 95% of the population is Japanese. In the United States, of course, we are very multicultural. It's very difficult to go anywhere and see people that are just like you because people are mixed. No, I'm not talking about mixed races, but somebody, we have Italians married to Swedes, and it really, that's just the way we mix. Our population has been so. I don't want to use I was talking about this earlier today, the whole melting pot thing. But the reality is that it's really difficult to tell, to look at somebody and say, oh, your ancestors came from Sweden, didn't they? Or your ancestors came from Czechoslovakia. You look like a Belgian to me. That just doesn't really happen. My own family married mostly were English. So about I had my DNA checked, and we were 56% English and what was it, 24% German or something. It was just bizarre. So we were, and no Northern Europeans, no Southern Europeans, no Eastern Europeans. It was all people from right there, England, France, Germany, Belgium, Ireland. There was a little bit of Irish in my blood, but there was nobody from no blondes from Northern Europe, no brunettes from Italy or Greece or any place. As weird as that is, researchers have discovered that the most frequent topic of conversation is gossip about other people. Studies that track people's happiness over time find that their happiest times are when they are with others. People's most emotionally wrenching experiences involve the breakup of relationships and the death of loved ones. Communal sharing, the members of a group emphasize their common identity rather than consider their idiosyncrasies. In communal sharing, every person is treated the same. Each has the identical rights and privileges as every other member of their group. The ideal in communal sharing is equality among all the members of the group. I was watching a television show last night. It was a documentary about session musicians in Los Angeles. In the 1960s and 1970s. And it turned out that most of the really good music coming in the rock and roll era was played by the same guys. They're the ones that played on the records. And of course, then they would get a group together and go out and tour. But they had all these session musicians that did most of the playing because they were really, really good. And there was only one woman that was one of these session musicians, and it was really kind of funny because she was kind of a leader. She was a bass player, played the guitar bass, bass guitar. Anyway, and people talked about her. They said, yeah, she's just one of the guys. She's just one of the guys. That's what they're talking about with communal sharing. They would banter back and forth, and it was really kind of interesting that she was that acceptable in the group because she was such a good musician. Despite the fact she was female and everybody else was male. And this was the 60s. I mean, it was a totally different time. Authority ranking involves the inequality of relationships that people share. Within authority ranking relationships, people are linearly ordered along a hierarchical social dimension. People with higher ranking have prestige and privileges that those with lower ranking do not. Subordinates are often entitled to receive protection and care from those above. The lower ranked members earn less money, are allowed fewer privileges, and are obliged to follow the orders of those above them. Asymmetry underlies all authority ranked relationships, and this is one of the reasons why today, just before I started this lecture, evidently the grand jury in New York City has decided to indict Donald Trump. Now, and you can believe anything that you want about what's going on as far as Donald Trump is concerned, but almost everybody in the United States is shocked, not because they don't think he did what they say that he did, but because he has such high prestige as a former president, as somebody running for president, that to indict somebody with that level of prestige is unheard of, is totally unheard of. And of course, this presidents of the United States normally don't do some of the strange things that Donald Trump has done. This has to do with the hush money paid to the porn star Stormy Daniels. But this is something that has never happened before. Is it because of their prestige? Well, possibly that's one of the reasons why. Um, Historically, we can't look back and say, well, this guy did this, and that was a lot worse than what Donald Trump has done. Of course, there are other things that it looks like he might be indicted for that don't have anything to do with porn stars or Stormy Daniels or hush money. So, but this is the first time an ex-president or a president. If you remember, they were saying that when they were investigating him when he was president, that as the president he couldn't be arrested. And of course, now that he's not the president, he can be arrested. He's the same as everybody else, and that is the question. Does he have more prestige? Does he have more authority ranking? Does he have more prestige than anyone else? And does that give him a get out of jail free card? Another basic relational structure is equality matching, based on the idea of balance and reciprocity. People keep track of what is exchanged in equivalent terms. You do this for me, then I have to, if you ask me, you help me arrange my house, then if you call me and ask me to help you move, I have to do that because that is the equality matching. While equality matching is probably the least familiar relational structure to Westerners, it is quite common in many cultures around the world. For example, exchanging Christmas cards, taking turns, exchanging dinner invitations, and carpooling. And of course, that's the way it works around the world. And in the United States. I drive today, I'll drive this week if you'll drive next week, that kind of thing. Market pricing is another type of relational structure. All features of benefits that are exchanged can be reduced to a single underlying dimension, usually in money. People expect to ultimately receive something equivalent to what they have given. People normally feel some degree of freedom to move openly between relationships, and this is known as relational mobility. Some people have high relational mobility. They feel that they aren't bound by old relationships and are able to start new ones at will. And of course, we don't always understand how this works. I'm from a different generation, so I would never date my ex-wife's sister. I don't think I would anyway, and I would be it would be expected of me that I would not. Other people feel more restricted in their relationships, so they have low relational mobility. Their commitments and obligations to their old relationships are so great that they're controlled by them, and they don't feel that the freedom to form new relationships. They don't feel that freedom. They view relationships as stable and lifelong that provide both benefits and costs in order to maintain them. Relationships in low relational mobility situations are not always positive. Some people really don't get along with each other. If this is not an option to decide that they will not engage with one another, they will continue to have a relationship, though it might be fraught with negative feelings. And of course, I've had this problem with a lot of my in-laws. Um, it turns out that women that I have married marry me because they see me as a father figure. They see me as stable. Of course, I had the two kids after my first marriage. But a lot of times, well, it, it, and I don't get along with the in-laws because they don't get along with their own parents. So here I am into my third marriage, and the reality is that I've never gotten along with any of my in-laws, and that was a lot. I've had six, and I didn't really get along with any of them. So, but especially my first marriage, she was trying to get out of the house. She was trying to leave her parents behind. It was fraught with not really with conflict. It was fraught with negative interactions between her mother and her father. So that's what she was trying to get away from. Anyway, so a lot of different reasons why people get married. The average American adult reports having a network of 20.76 friends. Lots of friends, and everybody eats pizza, hopefully. The average adult in Hong Kong has a network of 13.23 friends. The average German adult has a network of 12.75 friends. Now, this is really kind of interesting. So, Americans have a lot more friends than anybody else. And this is one of the things that you will hear if you go overseas is that Americans are a lot friendlier than anybody else. Is that because Americans feel more dominant, so they can be friendly, more friendly with other people? It's really kind of fascinating that that Americans feel the freedom to be nice to people. I was just watching a video about a German woman that went back to when she went back to Germany. She said that the clerks in German stores were rude to her when she went back. She'd lived in the United States for a couple of years, and then when she went back, she had reverse culture shock. And the reason she had reverse culture shock was because they were so rude to her. She was used to being in the United States where everybody's nice to everybody else. And of course, maybe it has something to do with the fact that when you live in a country that is more homogenous, where everybody's German or everybody's Japanese or everybody's whatever country, and then you don't feel the same need to try to get along with everybody else. In the United States, we have people that are of Swedish descent and Irish descent and Italian descent, African descent and Mexican descent and Puerto Rican and whatnot. All these people trying to get along, the only way they can get along is if everybody's really nice to each other. And maybe that has something to do with it. So Americans have a much larger network, friend network than any other country, from Hong Kong to Germany. A common reaction heard among many international people after their first encounters with Americans is how friendly they seem. Compared with people from other countries, Americans have a rather casual attitude toward forming friendships. In collectivistic contexts, an important aspect of friendship is to provide each other with advice, and this advice is frequently offered regardless of whether one's friends wants to receive it. Unsolicited advice is common in a variety of collectivistic cultures. Turkey and Colombia, for example. It seems to be especially prevalent in Russia. Russians will tell you what they think right off the bat. They don't care. According to BBC journalist James Rogers, and this is James Rogers, the picture on the left, you can't really say mind your own business in Russian. You can translate the phrase literally, but the concept is not well understood because Russians never mind their own business. They mind everybody's business. A study by Chintsova, Dutton, and Vaughn in 2012, looking at unsolicited advice among Americans and Russians, found that Russians were twice as likely to have given unsolicited advice. The amount of advice given by Americans was more likely to be contingent on whether it was requested. The amount of advice given by Russians was unaffected by whether or not it was requested. The Russians just gave you their advice. In Russia, a big part of friendship seems to be to let your friends know how you think they should be leading their lives differently. And there you go. And I don't know who these two guys are, but there they are. And these are mixtures of their faces. These are the same two guys. Now, the interesting thing is that there's a lot of redheads in Russia. I'm not trying to say, wow, look at, Russia is like Ireland or Scotland. They have a lot of redheads. But there's a pocket just north of Ukraine where the majority of people are redheaded. And so it's very common to see redheads in that area of Russia and in northern Ukraine. There are pockets of redheads around the world. There's, Ireland is one, and Scotland is one, and this area of the old Soviet Union is one as well. When Ghanaians and Americans were asked whether having a lot of friends was good, Ghanaians said that it was foolish. Friendship to Ghanaians involves obligations, both financial and social. Thus, too many friends could make you a pauper with no control over your life, because if they ask you to do something and they're your friends, you have to do it. If they ask you for money, then you have to give it. Research conducted with Westerners has shown that physically attractive people have a number of more positive life outcomes than those that are less physically attractive, and these outcomes extend across a broad array of domains in ways that may seem patently unfair. So pretty people get stuff. This is America. She used to be Ugly Betty. This is her as Ugly Betty. This is what she actually looked like when she wasn't Ugly Betty. Essays that are believed to have been written by an attractive author are evaluated more positively than ones believed to have been written by less attractive authors. This is another individual. She's an actress as well. That's according to Landy and Siegel in 1974. And the reality is, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you give me your paper, when you send me your paper, I will annotate it with your first initial and your last name. And there's a reason for that. I don't want to know whether you are a female or a male, and I don't want to know which male or female you are, because I don't want to think more positively about you because of your status. As weird as that sounds, it's really kind of strange because we have been looking at this over the last 40 or 50 years, and actually the last issue of the Monitor magazine is talking about supporting male education. Back in the 60s and 70s, and I think I told you guys this, back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the colleges around the United States were all male colleges. Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Notre Dame, the academies were all male. And because of that, they were saying that women, the feminist movement said that women were being treated unfairly. And they were definitely being treated unfairly. So what happened in education was they started adjusting education so that it fit with the female way of learning better. And so one of the things that has happened is it's like a pendulum. We've swung all the way to the one side where males are ignored and females are put forward, and now we're just about at a situation where we've been at 65%, 35% on our college campuses for about 20 years now, but it seems to be getting worse. Fewer males are going to college. That may be because of the way they're treated in junior high and high school. They're treated like thugs. You know, they're treated like they all have ADHD or something. Just really kind of fascinating stuff. So, what needs to happen potentially in the future to bring more males into education is to focus more on how males learn rather than uh, rather than focus on how females learn. They've had studies where males and females did exactly the same thing, and the females were given probation or a pass, and the males were punished for whatever they did. This has been going on for a long time, as sad as that is. So I'm doing my little tiny part by not acknowledging whether you're male or female. Attractive politicians get more votes than unattractive ones. Of course, Hillary Clinton, I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton is a great beauty and Trump is not as unattractive, but she certainly got more votes than he did by about 3 million. Attractive children are rated as smarter and better behaved by their teachers, and this is especially true of females. Attractive MBA grads earn more money than less attractive MBA grads, and that's according to Freese et al. In 1991. And I won't say which one of these two is the prettiest or which one of these kids is the cutest. Attractive criminals get lighter sentences than less attractive criminals. And this is according to studies by Stewart in 1980. And of course, if we look at these guys, I'm not going to say which ones are pretty and which ones are not. From an early age, we learned that attractive people have more desirable characteristics than unattractive ones, such as when we learn of Cinderella's kindness and beauty in contrast to her evil and ugly stepsisters. Cinderella is an old story. It's not just a Disney movie, but if you read the story, the stepsisters are evil and ugly in the original Grimm's fairy tale. Some people refer to this as the tyranny of the beautiful, and it has been explained by our ability to discern beauty almost immediately after meeting someone. We will often assume that they have other positive features as well, and this is known as the halo effect. This is Audie Murphy. He is the most highly decorated soldier of World War II. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor and a number of silver stars and bronze stars for bravery. And as you can see, was a fairly attractive man. He became an actor after he came back from the war. This individual, I can't remember his name. I've got his name later on. Yeah, there, Jeremy Meeks. That's his name. Jeremy Meeks. Jeremy Meeks was in jail for intimidation. He had tried to shake somebody down. He was a thug from in Northern California, and they published the pictures of all the people in jail, and the women in Northern California just went crazy. And when they saw his face, um, and he was offered a modeling contract, as weird as that sounds, despite his facial tattoos, his neck tattoos, and whatnot. Women just thought he was gorgeous, and there he is as a model, Jeremy Meeks. And this, of course, is Audie Murphy with all of his decorations. Because he's so pretty. And at the time, he was married and had a child, but he divorced his wife, and he started dating modeling agency's daughter. So he's out there somewhere. To this day, most most people in prison don't don't become models, but Jeremy Meeks, because of his facial symmetry and his light blue eyes, I guess, has become a model. This is Jonathan Cahill from the United Kingdom. Jonathan Cahill was thought to be attractive as well. Uh, they were looking for him. He was an escaped. He wasn't a convict. He had been arrested, but he was a known. Uh, they knew that he had committed this crime, and so they published his picture, and the women in England just went crazy over him for one reason or another. Anyway, these are Jonathan Cahill. Another example of when they publish pictures of pretty men, women are very positive about them and they want to take care of them, make them not be criminals anymore. That worked worked for him. This guy's back in jail, despite the fact that all those women offered to incarcerate him in their bedrooms, as weird as that sounds. Anyway, Jonathan Cahill. People from Ghana and the United States were asked whether they were happy with their lives. Attractive Americans were more satisfied with their lives than unattractive ones. However, in Ghana, attractive Ghanaians were less satisfied with their lives than unattractive Ghanaians. Beauty is a commodity in the United States, but it is not a commodity in Ghana. So if you are pretty in the United States, you can get away with all kinds of stuff. You will go to the head of the class, as weird as that sounds. Oishi and colleagues in 2009 studied American college students, comparing those who had lived in one place and those who had moved multiple times. The movers had more conditional loyalty. This is really important to me because we were in the military, and as military kids move around a lot. Sometimes they will move every 2 or 3 years, which is tough on them because they have to make new friends. But there are positives about military kids or people that move all the time. One is that the movers had more conditional loyalty. They had more Facebook friends on campus. They recognized their personality traits as part of their identity, and they preferred chain stores. Well, I guess none of these aren't really positive. I guess more Facebook friends, and they recognize their personality traits as part of their identity. Both of my kids did this. They were fairly successful. Had lots of friends on campus. When my daughter and my son went away to college, my son made friends right away. My daughter made friends right away. Most of the kids tried to stick around with their high school classmates, but Roxy and Chris were able to make friends readily because that's what they had to do when they were in the military. But people that stay in one place all the time aren't used to having to make new friends. Cities that tend to have a great deal of mobility, San Diego, Los Angeles, Atlanta, have more fair weather sports fans, high crime rates with less pro-community action, more large national chain stores. This itinerant lifestyle may make the United States culture very much different than it is in England or Europe. In many Latin American cultures, people place an emphasis on maintaining harmonious relationships and on making expressive displays of graciousness, hospitality, and personal harmony. This is known as simpatico. Latin Americans view their self-concepts to be more characterized by traits that reflect simpatico, such as easygoing, respectful, courteous, and agreeable. Latin Americans also expect interactions with others to be dominated by positive social behaviors and to have fewer negative social behaviors compared with the exceptions of European Americans. Expectations of European Americans. So they feel like simpatico is part of their personality, is part of their life. So if you're around somebody who's Hispanic, there is a possibility that if they feel close to you, then they will be very hospitable, very gracious, and seek personal harmony. Latin Americans show a clear preference for working in groups in which people strive to maintain a warm and hospitable atmosphere. European Americans, especially Protestants, show a clear preference for staying focused on the task at hand, as compared to being around people and talking all the time, which is one of the things that you see with Hispanic individuals, Latin Americans. Latin Americans act in more sociable ways than the European Americans, and time sampling studies find that they spend a greater proportion of their time socializing with others. Humans require such an extended period of costly protective care and socialization that they fare best when they have two parents devoted to providing resources and socializing them. In the ancestral environment, it was likely that parents who did not feel especially strong love for their children were less likely to have their children survive the tenuous circumstance of a subsistence lifestyle. Some strong incentives were needed to keep the parents together, so they would both remain to support the children. According to the reasoning, romantic love was selected as the glue that keeps couples together. Those people who did not develop feelings of love for their partners would have been less likely to stay with them and would have ended up having fewer surviving offspring than those who felt strong feelings of love. One review of ethnographies of 166 cultures found clear evidence of romantic love in 89% of them. Historically, the majority of marriages around the world have been arranged by families rather than by couples themselves. How I Met Your Mother, I met her on our wedding day. Arranged marriage in India. This is really kind of interesting because I have a former student who has become a friend of mine that I keep in contact with, mainly because I need to write him a letter of recommendation from time to time. But he's from Bangladesh, and I was talking to he keeps complaining that he wants to have a relationship with somebody. He wants to fall in love and get married and have a family, and he's in his early 30s, I think, maybe middle 30s. Anyway, a problem that he seems to have, is meeting people because he's from Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, they do things very, very differently. And I told him the last time he went home that maybe he should ask his mother to find him a wife. And of course, that became an interesting topic. He never argues with me about anything, but it's when I say something that doesn't really fit with what he wants, it's an interesting conversation. Looking at 186 societies, researchers found that Western strategies in finding an appropriate spouse was only seen among 31% of men and 8% of women. In a study by Levine and colleagues in 1995, college students from several countries were asked this question: if a man or woman had all the qualities you desired, would you marry this person if you were not in love with them? That's the question. If a man or woman had all the qualities you desired, would you marry this person if you were not in love with them? Half of the students from India and Pakistan said they would marry the person, and 1/4 more were undecided. So half the students would marry the person even if they weren't in love with them. And of course, in India and Pakistan, many of the marriages are arranged. Now, this gets a little weird. Over 80% of the Americans, Britons, Australians, and Latin Americans said they would not, and only a small percentage, less than 5%, of these countries said that they would. In other words, in these countries, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, and in Latin America, love. It has to be love, 80%, that's an awful lot. And there were only 5% that would marry if they weren't in love. The identical question was posed to American college students in 1967. Now, in 1967, I graduated from high school. In 1969, I got married to my first wife, and 4.5 years later, we got a divorce after having 2 children. Now, they asked, this is the identical question they asked the people back in 1967 when I was dating my first wife and when I was marrying my first wife. 65% of the women, but only 24% of the women, I'm sorry, 65% of the men, but only 24% of the women said they would not marry someone they did not love. And this is according to the study by Kephart in 1967. So here's the problem. Back in 1967, the late 60s and early 70s, men are only marrying for love, but look at that. 1/4 of the women, 75% of women were marrying without love. They were just looking for security. So potentially, I was a sucker because I'm one of these 65%. I had to marry for love. So I was in love with my first wife. But the percentages tell me that she probably wasn't in love with me. And that may be the reason why our marriage didn't last past 4.5 years. The likelihood of a culture favoring arranged marriage is not determined randomly. It appears to relate to the dominant kind of family structure in the culture. And this is a picture of Donald Trump with his second wife, Marla Maples. Why do I know her name's Marla Maples? I remember when this whole thing took place. He was married to Ivana Trump, and he had 3 children with her, and then he married Marla Maples because potentially I think she may have been pregnant at the time, but that's not important. Anyway, divorced Ivana and married Marla Maples. Then he had that other daughter. And now, of course, he's married to, what's her name? Jeez. I was just reading a story about her. Anyway, what's my point? Something else that just happened. I just found this out. Ivana had a FBI file. Evidently, the FBI knew that she was just trying to get out of communist Czechoslovakia at the time. They knew this, and so they kept following her around. The FBI did. So there's an FBI file on Ivana Trump. She died a couple of years ago. Maybe it was last year she died. Anyway, not important. Good in 1959 proposed that romantic love would become more important. Melania, that's her name, Melania Trump. Good in 1959 proposed that romantic love would become more important in cultures as the strength of extended family ties became weaker. The powerful feelings of romantic love could be somewhat irrelevant or even problematic for marriages in cultures with strong extended family ties. So as family ties weakened, especially in the United States, where potentially your in-laws, your extended family were across the Atlantic Ocean. In the United States, romantic love became very important because, of course, you needed to make that connection, that really strong connection between husband and wife, so that they would stay together and they could form a strong nuclear family. Because the extended family was overseas, was not in the area. And of course, in time, the breaking up of these extended family groups became more and more prevalent in the United States, with all the diverse people coming in and people marrying outside of their ethnic group. All of this stuff happened. Now, as far as the Dene people are concerned, of course, you guys are still have that strong clan relationship taking place. It's completely different than what's going on with the European Americans, with Hispanic Americans leaving their family down in Mexico, potentially leaving them back in Puerto Rico, leaving them in Colombia, leaving them in Venezuela. It's just a totally different situation as far as you're concerned, and with all American Indian groups in the United States, all the indigenous peoples of the Americas. You still have that strong extended family structure, whereas most European Americans, that has broken up generations ago because of the movement from one continent to the next, to North America. And it's just something that you need to be aware of. The fact that European Americans, you may think, geez, why don't you care about your grandparents? Why don't you care about your great grandparents? Well, in a lot of these cases, they're not even in the same hemisphere. It's just the way it works. It's just what has happened. The wanderers of the world have wandered into North America, the Western and South America, and Australia. The Western ideal of romantic love, of course, this isn't true in Africa. It's not true in Asia, and in Southern Asia. If you're from India, um, my friend who's from Bangladesh, his whole family is over in Bangladesh. So if he finds a romantic relationship and creates a family here in the United States, there is no extended family. There's not going to be any extended family as far as his family is concerned. Now there may be some on his spouse's side. The Western ideal of romantic love, characterized by intense feelings and mutual absorption, could be disruptive in cultures with large kin networks because such feelings can interfere with people's abilities to respect the wishes of their family members, of other family members. Mothers and fathers become important, brothers and sisters become important because they are so close. And potentially you have experienced this, where oddities have occurred because you weren't getting along with your sister-in-law or with your brother-in-law or with your in-laws. Just what things, they wanted one thing and you wanted something totally different. That's a possibility. As far as I was concerned, because my extended families, all of my in-laws were far away. Um, uh, I really didn't get along with them, mainly because I didn't really see them very frequently, and they didn't interfere with my families. Um, I got married to my first wife, and things were okay the first couple of years because I was in college. I wasn't that far away. We were only 60 or 70 miles away. From time to time, she would threaten to go back to her mother. That was a possibility. But then Vietnam War was going on, and I was shipped off to Texas for basic training, and then my training was in Wichita Falls, Texas. Well, that's 2 days away, pretty much, unless you drive 24 straight hours. That's 2 days away, and that was far enough for that whole break to take place. And that was part of the problem. Part of the problem is she wanted to be near her mother, and of course, I was in the military. I really couldn't just go. I think I'll leave now. I need to go home because my wife misses her mother. That's not the way it works, as they told me more than once. An analysis of data from when we went to our first duty station. My wife complained about that to the base commander, or he was the vice commander actually, and he said, if the Air Force wanted your husband to have a family, they would have issued him one, and that was it. And he was mad, just because she had complained about that. It was really kind of odd. We had gone in. We had gone in because she was complaining, and she wanted to talk to the guy in charge. And of course, as I was leaving, he was just shaking his head. And he was sure that I was going to get into trouble, but I didn't. I didn't get into trouble. Instead, she left me. She left me and went back home. An analysis of and didn't take the kids with her, so that was kind of interesting. An analysis of data from 117 non-industrialized societies found clear support for Good's hypothesis, and that's according to Lee and Stone in 1980. Marriages based on love were more likely in cultures with nuclear family structures than they were in cultures with extended family structures. Many arranged marriages start out with no feelings of love between the couple. However, in time, the husband and wife begin to develop strong feelings for one another. A good analogy is getting a pet and developing strong feelings for the animal the longer that you have it. And this has happened to us just within the last couple months. Somebody dumped a cat out, and it found its way into our barn. We brought it in the house because of the cold temperatures out there. We thought she was pregnant. She turned out not to be pregnant. But I'll tell you, my wife and I are just embracing this kitten because she's such a cutie. Really, it's and I this picture is the way I feel about that cat, which is weird because we have 7 other cats, and it's odd that we have such strong feelings for the newbie cat. People in arranged marriages describe their experiences in a similar manner. We live on a farm, so they're in and out and in and out most of the time, and it's warmed up, so the doors are all open and the cats are going in and out. The individual approaches a person as his or her new spouse with the expectation of eventually falling in love. With time, they usually do fall in love, and this is a cartoon from India that deals with that. Our parents want us to get to know each other so that we can decide if we want to get married. Yes. So let's add each other on Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, Orkut, LinkedIn, and friend feed. You can also subscribe to my blog. That way we can learn a lot about each other. And of course, that's the modern way. You learn about each other by blogs. With the abysmal failure rate of Western marriages, the assumption that arranged marriages are miserable is probably inaccurate. Most people in countries where arranged marriages are prevalent view arranged marriages as more likely to succeed than romantic marriages. A survey among adults living in various urban centers in India found that 74% of men and women believed that arranged marriages were more likely to succeed than love marriages. And this was, 30 years ago, Kishwar in 1994. There's also evidence that those in arranged marriages are at least as satisfied with their marriages as those in love marriages. Turkish couples in arranged marriages have been found to be as much in love with their partners as couples in love marriages. And this is 25 years ago, Hardest Q in 1999. Members of the Unification Church participated in mass arranged marriages where partners were chosen in ceremonies that involved thousands of men and women. And this is actually a picture from a arranged marriage situation in a Unification Church. Unification Church is out of Korea, but there are adherents in the United States. This is an auditorium in Korea where the head of the church is the one that paired people up. And as you can see, the women all wore wedding dresses and the men all wore tuxedos. The white sash around their necks is part of the wedding ceremony in Korea. And they would have these mass weddings where they didn't have anything to do with who their partner would be. It just who the leader of the church decided they should marry. Looking at marriages after 3 years, researchers found a similar rate of satisfaction between these couples and the general public. And of course, this was Song Yun Moon was the leader of the Unification Church. He has since died. and his wife has died. They were the ones, pairing people up in the beginning. This church still exists in the United States, and these arranged marriages are the way things work in that church. Men in Japanese arranged marriages were found to be more satisfied than those in love marriages, and this is an old research back in 1967 by Blood. So the men found their arranged marriages okay. They were pretty satisfied. Men in Chinese arranged marriages were as satisfied as those in love marriages, and this is according to Zhu and White in 1990. So the Chinese men and the Japanese men found arranged marriages okay. They are satisfied with, more satisfied than men in love marriages. However, women in Japanese arranged marriages were found to be less satisfied in arranged than love marriages, and this is according to Blood in 1967. Men are happy, the women were not. Women in Chinese arranged marriages were found to be less satisfied in their marriages than love marriages, and that's according to Zhu and White in 1990. So the men are more satisfied, the women are less satisfied. This suggests that the costs of arranged marriages are borne largely by women in the Japanese and Chinese cultures, and they are both male-dominated societies. And if you and I've been talking to a friend of mine about this, talking about the Japanese culture. I don't know that much about the Chinese culture. It's been a closed society. It's been a more closed society for about 70 years. But the Japanese society, we've got a lot of information about the Japanese society. And you can tell a lot from a society by their art, by their cartoons, as weird as that is in Japan. Yeah, it's a male-dominated society, and there's a lot of strange fantasies taking place in the Japanese culture. I'm not sure about the Chinese culture, but there's a lot of abuse, unfortunately, because it's a male-dominated society. A study by Gupta and Singh in 1982 compared marital satisfaction between Indian couples in arranged and love marriages. In the initial years of marriage, those in love marriages professed more love than those in arranged marriages. Over time, it was those in the arranged marriages who reported having the most love. And there's a reason for that. We're going to explain that in just a second. This pattern held true for both men and women. The study was replicated with similar results. So in India, both the men and women in arranged marriages are happy. In China and Japan, it's not that way. While these results may seem counterintuitive, Heine explains them using an interview with a Japanese colleague who had been in an arranged marriage for 30 years. Now you got to remember, Heine. This is Heine, of course. This is a picture of your author. And he obviously is a European Canadian. His wife is Japanese, and it was not an arranged marriage, certainly. In Japan, they would never arrange for two different ethnicities to marry. It's just they don't do that. They don't play that game. Okay, so he was talking to a Japanese a colleague who was in an arranged marriage. And of course, Heine is in a love marriage. When they were first married, they had no love for each other. Now that they have some love for each other, some love seems like quite a bit compared to no love. And, so things have gotten better. They had to get better because they went from 0 to someplace on the scale of 0 to 100. Couples in love marriages typically start out with a lot of love for each other. That's why they get married. Years later, it is not surprising that many of them report having less love than they did during their steamy courtship. Some love doesn't seem so great compared to a lot of love that they had for each other earlier. So if we're dealing with another 0 to 100 ratio, when they first got married, they were at 75. And now, of course, since they've been married for an extended length of time and she doesn't like the way he chooses food, and he doesn't like the way that she cleans the house. They're at 45 instead of 75. With the arranged marriage, of course, they started at 0, and now they're at 35, and that seems like a lot. And that's the reason, that may be the reason why arranged marriages look like they're probably better than the love matches. A study in Israel comparing arranged and love marriages found similar results. Those in arranged marriages were found to be as much in love with their partners as couples in love marriages, and that's by research by Schachter in 1991. And that is the end of the lecture. I won't harass you anymore about these things. And I'll talk to you next week about something medicine, I think, is what we're talking about